All right. On to the next section. Now, we've talked to a whole bunch of people who are on the corporate side inside larger organizations, right? But we've got people who are leading design consultancies and agencies, working with businesses as an outside catalyst to help so many businesses who are not able to have their own design teams just yet. And I'm excited to bring some dear friends up to the table. We've got Louis Alt and Phnam Bagley, Marco Perry, and Gregor Mittersinker. And let me just quickly read through their bios for you. Louis has been pioneering in the service design field in South America for over a decade. As a founder of Livework, Sao Paulo, the South American branch of the world's first service design agency, Louis has headed innovation and service design projects for organizations like, I hope I'm pronouncing these correctly, Itaú Bank, Latam Airlines, Latam Airlines, Whirlpool, AB InBev, Petroba, Bus, Natra, and Roche Pharmaceuticals. He created the first design thinking course in Latin America at ESPM, wrote the best-selling Design Thinking Brazil book, and has been lecturing in postgraduate, master's, and doctorate programs in institutions such as Parsons New School, Universidad Católica in Chile, Federal University of Santa Catarina, and FAAP Business School. Thanks
Great.
for joining us, Louis.
Thank you, Ange.
And then a new friend that I've met on Clubhouse is Phnam Bagley. Phnam's a partner and creative director at Nonfiction. Just absolutely love the name of your firm. A San Francisco-based design firm that turns science fiction into reality for a better future. She's a French industrial designer and space architect with 15 years of experience creating cutting-edge hardware in wearables, audio, neurotechnology, biohacking, healthcare, education, sports, transportation, and aerospace. She specializes in turning groundbreaking technologies into attainable, intuitive, and beautiful products that help humans become the best versions of themselves. Phnam works with a variety of companies from Fortune 500 to startups covering 4 continents. Clients include Intel, Comcast, Facebook, Atari, Philips, Movida, Halo Neuroscience, and Kala Health. She speaks internationally on the subject of design for a better future, covering stories of sustainability, design thinking, education, and human flourishing. Thank you, Phnam, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Also have another long-term friend of mine, Marco Perry. Marco, I think I remember when you began Pensa. I can't believe, how many years is that now? 20, oh, is it in your bio?
2006, I think.
Wow. Marco is a founder of Pensa. He's an information sponge, addicted to the new and tech blogs and audiobooks. He has over 20 years of experience inventing, designing, and engineering just about everything from diapers to digital fabrication tools, connected IoT devices, and solar chargers. He has the rare ability to synthesize vast amounts of technical information and guides his team to translate into real solutions that work for people. Marco has won and earned numerous awards, including multiple IDSA IDA Gold, IIDEX Neocon Gold, Architecture, how do you pronounce that? Architizer A, Fast Company Innovation by Design, Core 77 Design Award category winner, in Chicago Antheum Gold Good Design Awards. Beyond his consulting, Marco has contributed to the design community, including lecturing, mentoring young engineers, organizing design conferences, and starting new ventures such as Pensa Lab, DIYer. Thank you, Marco, for joining.
Thanks.
And Gregor, another dear friend from years, and actually Gregor was wonderful enough to round out our summit, design summit last year as our DJ, and I realized, oh my God, we have to have you on the panel this year. Gregor Mittersinker is the principal and co-founder of Loft LLC, a mechanical engineer and human factors industrial designer by training. Gregor brings over 25 years of experience in translating consumer needs to product features, product implementation, manufacturing, and commercializing products designed to manufacture in markets such as chemical and biological defense, computing devices, medical devices, and wearables. Loft is an integrated UX, ID, ME, medical products development consultancy, and they're a capable partner to develop effective solutions to their unique and often varied development changes. Loft's expertise includes an array of strategic research, planning, conceptualization, design, and engineering services. Their development team are typically comprised of HFE researchers, ID, UX designers, EE, FW, ME engineers, with additional personnel and disciplines. They've won numerous awards in IDSA, IDA awards, Red Dot, Good Design, Core 77, written up in magazines, Idea, Wired, Fast Company, and they hold over 100 patents for product innovation around the globe. Gregor, thank you so much for being part of the conversation today.
Sounds fancy, huh?
So I love this panel discussion because there are so many, for every corporation that has built and invested in a design team, and it takes a long time for corporations to build a design team. Before they even get to that point, you guys are, you all are there at the forefront working with companies that, you know, have a business, whatever it may be, a product, a service, digital, physical, and all of a sudden they realize they can't get beyond point, you know, B to get to point C, right? Would love to just start off the conversation by asking you, and particularly around today in this pandemic, what are the types of challenges that businesses have, and how do you guys as consultancy owners, how do you support them, right? How do you help them realize the value of design to help, you know, help them solve their problems? Who wants to tackle this first? Gregor.
Uh-oh, putting me on the spot. I think, you know, so our business has changed fundamentally, I would say, through the pandemic, as we are much more digital and we are much more med device lab tech, because I think folks in that space, first of all, you know, COVID kind of became a real driver for innovation in startups, medical startups and medical, more established medical players. Also, the FDA loosened, you know, telemedicine guidelines, loosened kind of time to market. Emergency use authorizations became fairly common. So a lot of, you know, innovators in the field could leverage that kind of a gap to market very effectively to come up with new solutions and really establish themselves as players in the marketplace. At the same time, you know, most consumer clients of us were in a kind of hold and wait situation. So they were like, hey, all these things we wanted to do with you last year, next year, we'll do them a year later, you know. So it was definitely like a fundamental shift, I would say. I've talked to a bunch of folks in kind of the design service industries, and I think everybody saw that. You know, medical moving ahead, kind of accelerating their innovations, and then the consumer clients kind of, you know, holding out and waiting what would happen afterwards as the market kind of came back.
It's interesting because you think about medical and it takes so long traditionally. So that's an interesting shift. What were you going to say, Phnam?
This was a unique opportunity for a lot of folks, right? I mean, we worked on you know, lateral assay flow kits and all kinds of stuff that was related, and it was really, you know, there was a narrow window to get it out, basically, right? So it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I concur with what Gregor just said, especially in telehealth. We had worked in telehealth before, but things have accelerated so incredibly in hardware, software, and everything that surrounds it. And also behaviors, the adoption for B2B, B2C solutions is a lot higher now than ever. And kind of related to this remote access to technology is education. The world of education, access to support for teachers, for students, for schools in general, all over the world. Everybody's looking to new solutions that go beyond just putting people in front of screens and make do for classrooms. All of this is forcing all of these industries to change radically. I can add the space industry to that. You've probably seen in the last few years, and even this week, a lot of things radically changing about the way we see it. Space used to be inaccessible to us, and now we're starting to see a glimpse of it being part of our future. One last industry I like to point out is sustainability. A lot of people have gone through existential crises during this time, kind of asking themselves, why am I doing this? Why am I doing the same thing again and again? And why am I polluting or influencing others to pollute even more? And how can I change that? So we've had a lot of clients come to us and say, now is the time to change our behaviors, to change our decision making, and influence the rest of the industry to do the same thing.
Louis and Marco, do you guys have anything?
Yeah, no, very nice. I listen to me. Can you hear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was going to say that the challenges they kind of continue the same. So when the pandemic hit, I was really worried about the continuance of like the business and how we would continue to get projects and sustain the business. And I started thinking about, okay, as a service design, so we help companies to think about what they offer to clients and how they establish relationships with their clients, organizations. And fundamentally, it hasn't changed. It didn't change. So what changed was the context itself, because working on customer centricity, it was something that we were working before, and now the customer changed a bit, and then some adaptations had to be made, but the challenge was the same. Sustainable futures, as Phnam said, I hope I pronounced it correctly. As she said, it was also something in the agenda, but it became more urgent somehow. And some companies, like digital transformation, digital acceleration, as we call it, was also something that was in the agenda of some companies, most companies, but for some it was especially here in South America, for some it was like, okay, now we have to do this. So it seems that I was really worried in the beginning, but then it seems that the work itself got more urgent, and that was the biggest change, more than the challenges themselves. So this was interesting. It put us in a new place, and probably in this place that Phnam actually said that people were questioning exactly what they were doing, because that happened to a lot of our team as well, on projects, because too much workload, questioning the types of projects sometimes that we were doing. It seems like helping some clients were better than helping other types of clients in other projects. So it's an interesting change, I would say, but not a change in the challenges themselves, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think what we saw is when everything went into lockdown, everything was put on hold for about a week or two. And at the time, I didn't know if it was going to be a year or two or a week or two. And then there was everything was kind of brought back, and it was either things, as you say, were reprioritized, or ongoing trends were really firmed up, and then other things were about like, okay, now we really, since it takes us so long to get a product to market, that we need to start predicting the future today, knowing all these new elements. So as more concrete examples, there was some projects that we were working on that were shifted to almost the same project, but as a response to COVID, or as you mentioned, sustainability, was even more important and prioritized. But I think the things that were sort of in response to what's new is, the ongoing trend of the difficulties brick and mortar retail is seeing is even, far stronger. So that means people shop differently, select differently, view products and try them on and all these kind of things very differently. And there's a response to that. The other thing we saw is like predicting of the new norm, if there is a norm. And what we've seen over the past year and a half is that, as people have become so comfortable with remote work, that really means that being in a particular place is not as important as it was before. I think we'll see a pushback. I think if you see what's happening to the banks as in Wall Street, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs and everybody else calling everybody in 100% and really not embracing remote work. But what that means is that it's not just for employees, it's for businesses. So for like us as a consultancy, even though we can technically reach anyone, we mostly reach people within a region. But if that region, that physical geographic boundary is no longer important, and the employees that we're working with within their organizations are scattered all over the world, then it doesn't really matter that we're in New York. We could be working with anybody anywhere in the world anyway. And as more as that becomes natural, then I can see that there's sort of a flattening. There's not a centering of concentration of talent or concentration of projects or things like that in San Francisco, New York, Boston, Chicago, those kind of things.
What are you guys branching into new categories? You know what I mean? Like, is there, as a result, what's changing in the world? Are there new markets that you're seeing where there's more being built in those categories? I don't know. Like, I'm thinking Phnam, obviously. Like, I love the name Nonfiction. Like, what are, new industries and categories that are growing that you're seeing businesses that might need help there? Just curious.
Yeah. So we are putting our foot in. So we've been in the space industry for a while, but like agriculture technology is huge right now. Thinking about applying sustainable product development in ways that have never been done before is big. But I would say the trend that's happening right now that's getting stronger and stronger is the bridging between industries. The healthcare industry used to be focused on healthcare or sick care, as some people call it. The education industry used to be, staying in its lane, and all the other industry, audio industry, IoT, wearables, whatever. What I find interesting is when people or groups from all of these industries are speaking with each other and start innovating by solving problems in new ways or in ways that are more common in other industries. And that's very exciting for us. And that turns us, designers, industrial designers, UX designers, into systems designers, right? Working with cross-functional teams of mechanical engineers, electrical, software, firmware, whatever, working together to come up with solutions that are personalized and really solve a problem. And that's very much linked to the trend of eliminating bias in tech. So as we all know, a lot of tech has been developed for the average person or white male 50th percentile, average person. And the problem with that we've run into is that the consumer has been voicing themselves and saying that the product doesn't work on them or doesn't fit their bodies or is just not satisfying their specific needs. And because we're getting more granular with the technologies we're using, with the disciplines we're integrating in the process of strategizing a solution, we're getting closer to that.
Certainly, I think in the last year, more so than ever, we're realizing the need for diversification right? Of those that are in this industry and how we practice it. Can I ask you guys, when I talk to professionals in design, one of the other tracks, this is origin story. I would love to hear what inspired you, each of you, to start your own agency, and what's it been like. And so when I talk to professionals who say, I one day want to start my own agency, right, my own firm, there are barriers to understanding what that's about. And I'd be curious to hear from each of you, what inspired you? At what point did you say, I need to do this. I need to break out and start my own agency? Marco?
I think if you have the bug to do it, you just have to do it. There's almost no choice. You know what I mean? I think people who are entrepreneurs are fundamentally unemployable. I just think that, you kind of have this bug. I mean, I worked at great companies and I liked everything about them, and I quit anyway. And it was a terrible time. I had an infant and a 2-year-old, and I bought an apartment that was too expensive, and it was the worst time to take the risk. But I kind of felt like I had no choice because I just had the bug to do it. And it wasn't really the goal to per se to create an agency, but it was a goal to create something that I would love to work on. The one thing you don't really think about when you do it is that, like, I like to be, say, an inventor, right? It's part design, part engineering, creativity, regardless, coming up with something new. If you own a business, you're really a salesperson, and that nobody really goes out and says, "I can't wait to be a salesperson," But well, some do, but not me. And so in the end, you create great projects, or you collect great tools and toys and softwares and hardware to play with, and you don't get to play with any of it because you're pretty much a salesperson. But so there's things you don't really think about when you go out and jump off that cliff to build the airplane. Again, like, if you're gonna take the risk to do it, you're gonna just do it anyway.
I love your point. No one goes out to say, oh, I'm going to be a salesperson and just rep myself. This isn't, but you have to go out and represent your firm and your vision. But tell me, what do you guys think?
Like even like a chef, right, wants to start a restaurant, but because they love to cook, they're probably not going to be doing the cooking. You know what I mean?
What about you guys, Gregor?
I think, I have a slightly different perspective. I spent half of my life on the corporate side and, worked at large and small companies. And I love, the corporate side gives you incredible depth and like longevity and power. You have the ability to launch a product, sustain it, update it. It's a thrill. I think that what I really love the most about running my own agency is this idea of giving my wisdom to the next generation, even that I'm not potentially as much involved in the work, because as you said, you have to do biz dev and you have to do finance and all the other stuff. I think just seeing like a team evolve and get better at what they do, and having an incredible team, we're very, very fortunate, but just seeing them, doing their own thing and kind of extending that love for design, that love for engineering, that love for kind of making innovative product solutions is very gratifying. And I feel that, a design team can be more pure about that than a corporate entity, right? Because you're obviously a functional team and you're like a sliver of that. And folks tend to be very disenfranchised if they, come out of design or engineering school and go in a corporate environment right away. They just finally realize, hey, I'm in a meeting all day. I'm doing one product every 2 years. It can be kind of a grind, right? So design agency is way more fun. We have like 5 projects every given moment. Right. Everybody works on everything.
Such variety.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are certain corporations where, they have full-on design teams internally, but they need that external catalyst, right?
Right.
because sometimes the internal team becomes that steward to hold on to the brand mission, and sometimes we need that outside voice to sometimes even validate, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we work with very large companies with very extended design teams internally, Bose, 3M, and I mean, I feel like sometimes what happens is the smartest internal design teams understand when to bring out an external partner, right? And it's really shows the fidelity of the internal team when they have the foresight to say, hey, this is maybe not something we want to tackle on our own. Maybe we need a strategic partner on the outside to leverage technology, digital divide, like also sometimes, certain divisions in corporations are not very nice to designers, right? So sometimes it's easier on the outside to make a change and help your internal team to get leverage. It's always a collaboration. Design is a collaboration, right? There's not one person ever, even Dieter Rams had a team, right? And he is kind of like on the forefront of all of this. So I think it's important to have both.
I very much agree with that. One thing about leading about running a consultancy is that you are forced to be at the forefront of design and at the forefront of leadership, because these two things are moving targets. And that's what's very exciting about the job as well. I don't know about all of you on the panel, but like one of the greatest frustrations I've seen when I worked in other consultancies is that I was seeing these brilliant people starting consultancies as designers and stop designing. Like, what a waste of talent. And so that's one thing that at Nonfiction we try to keep, is that even though my partner and I, are leading the team, we are still designers. We still put our hands in the dirt. We still get, deep into the details of what it takes to create great products or great solutions. And, I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of work, but it's so incredibly satisfying because you get to do what you want, build the world, build the future that you want with the resources given to you by your clients, and get to influence industries that way, right? All of us, I assume, want to influence industry. We don't want just to design yet another box, apply a color, or apply a form factor. That's not what industrial design is. Not good industrial design for my part. It's really questioning why we're doing this. Why are we doing this way? Why haven't we changed the way we've been doing this for the last 30 years? And what is in front of us, right? It's not only the application, it's also the methodology. We are the people influencing this industry to become what it needs to be in the future. So let's do it now.
Yeah, and I think I want to add to that. I think design is a process. It's not one person with a genius mindset that out designs everybody else. I think once you see it as a process, then multiple people can contribute to that process, and it can be very gratifying to also be limited involved in something and then still kind of see it all the way through and use your 20, 30 years of wisdom to kind of guide folks that maybe need kind of like I feel like the vision is always a collected vision, and if the client shares that vision, that's the most rewarding, and then every part of your organization kind of can contribute to that vision, right? In different levels.
Yeah, I have to say though, I'm talking to more people like in industrial design, and as an industrial designer myself, even though I work with service design, I see that industrial designers, product designers, traditional product designers, they seem to be more, most product designers, they seem to be more focused on the work and on the style that they can embed into the solutions. So I like your view of being it a collaborative process, Gregor. In service design, what I have to tell my team most of the time is the opposite, because the movement to co-creation was so strong that I was perceiving that many designers were hiding themselves in the collaborative space, so they were some of the professionals, they seemed afraid to put themselves into the solution, and give some kind of vision to the work itself, and their own vision, and bring their own vision to the solution space. So I find it nice because it's always a balance, right? It's not totally collaborative, and I'm going to do exactly what everybody wants me to do, because somebody has to help and come up with a decision at some point. But then it's not an egocentric process where there's one person that knows all the answers, and it's the kind of like this genius that is going to give point the way out or the way forward. So I like seeing this as a balance between putting myself or everybody has to put a little bit of themselves, but it's the collaboration and the individual part of the work.
Louis, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, I heard it in Wilma's talk about understanding your own goals as well as the team and the company's goals. I heard Bob and Alistair mention this as well. There's an interesting, and in the work that I do when I work with people, it's like there's this duality of what do I individually need, but also what does the collective need if I'm part of a company or if I'm working with a client, what are their goals? It's a balance of understanding you individually within the organization, right? And this is within the business of design, or even within other creatives.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean, a million, 1,000 times agree with this. The death of 1,000 cuts is very common in corporate environments, right? And it's the lowest common denominator is winning. And I think it needs strong leadership on the inside and on the outside to kind of get ahead of that. You can be inclusive and still drive a vision that might be challenging to implement, or might be too expensive, takes too long, whatever. I mean, a million factors, right? But I think that collective understanding of, hey, we got to do this is important, right? I think, to be honest, I think I believe COVID is the societal challenge of our lifetime, and I think we haven't seen it, right? And I think it sparks very new approaches, and the smart corporate leaders understand that and take risks. And what I also love about kind of the Zoom generation or the Zoom year is you see the kids of your CFO, of your CEO, you see people kind of struggling getting onto Zoom. It's a humbling experience. I feel like strong leaders become stronger and weak leaders get called out easier, right? I feel like it's been a really interesting year, and I look forward to what's going to happen the next one.
I love how the pandemic absolutely globally we've all gone through this shift, right? Does that change the way your clients are receptive to change? I feel like as an industry, the common lament as creatives, as designers, whatever specialty we're in, the lament is the clients don't want to go as far, pushing their own boundaries, right? And so are they more receptive now in general? Like, just, are they saying, yes, oh my God, the world has changed on us, we really need to go, or are they still incremental? And I mean, there's that hesitation to, how much do we invest in? How far do we go beyond what our competitors are doing? That kind of thing.
I think in the US, most companies we work with are pretty cash rich right now. I mean, even that they might have lost some markets, they all have been kind of bunkered down and are really kind of trying to redefine themselves. And I think they have to. If you look at transportation, any kind of like large industry right now is getting somewhat disrupted. Insurance, I think there's a lot of kind of industries that this almost was like a little suspended year, right? Everybody got frozen for a year, and now they're like, what are we going to do, right? And the ones I see definitely a lot of more risk taking with the smart companies, but also unfortunately I also see a lot of kind of the corner office old white guys trying to leverage their power play again, and it's unfortunately for them, but fortunately for the employees, I think they have a lot more power. They take new jobs, they move on. I feel like the smart companies realize that their HR policies might be from the 50s and they have to change it.
I've seen the trend that if before COVID, teams were terrified of design, they remain terrified of design.
Right.
And if they were interested in inching into, new spaces, new ways of thinking about things, then they look to us to help them along the way. So yeah, it's been
polarity
very
of their
yeah.
and we're intensified.
Right.
And sometimes it can be in the same company. You have two different groups going two different ways.
I see that a lot, actually.
But so before the pandemic, we used to think that we would talk about the uncertainties and the fast pace of change in the world, and then now we realize that how fragile things are, and how the future can go lots of completely different ways. So innovation as a topic has become I think more accepted in organizations because of that, because the idea of the world changing very fast and the uncertainty of the world was there already, but then it kind of like took a big hit, and now we realize, or at least organizations, the executives which I talk to, they realize, no, okay, this is for real. This is, we can't actually know what to expect, so we have to be ready, we have to be agile, we have to have multiple solutions to different possibility scenarios, future scenarios. So it's I think it was a good move to design as a whole, because companies have to change themselves more constantly and be ready to change, and I think we are those agents of change.
Yeah, you absolutely are. I'm gonna, let me read some comments here on the side. I love Kelly Cook. Yes, design firm owners are fundamentally unemployable. And Michael Celia wrote, Phnam, love your value of keeping talent in the work, no matter what level. Agreed, we lose many great visionaries and designers to business ownership and team leadership. Yeah, in many places, it becomes, account management, right? Holding on to that is not easy. What do you, if you were able to speak to, for all of you, you guys working with businesses that have never met design before, I feel like you guys are at the forefront of working with companies that have never worked with, understood the value of design. Have you guys ever worked, you all, sorry, have you, when you meet a business owner or leader, how do you open up that discussion? How do you wake them up to the value of design, how design can help their corporation, whether it's a startup or enterprise scale?
One point I'd always try to put on the table immediately is make people understand that design is not something you apply. A lot of people think you develop a technology, you have an MVP prototype, and you apply design. And what they mean is that putting a shape, putting a color, user experience, ergonomics, or whatever to it. That's not really
MBA thinking, right? There's a formula, plug in the formula.
Yeah. That's not what we do. What we do is that we think about what happens before that. Why should this product exist? What is it saying? Who is it targeting? When is it going to make an impact? So really asking ourselves all of these questions first, and then validate whether or not this product is actually viable from a business perspective, from an influence perspective, and all the things that give us a reason to put out products, right? And really the strategic aspect of design needs to be a collaboration. We use that word a lot. Collaboration between the clients, between what's going on in the industry and us as designers. And then from there, we can make decisions whether or not, this thing should be round or square, this thing should have this color or this fabric. It comes afterward. Design, in the world is misunderstood a lot in that way. And education, free education, accessible education for everyone is so incredibly primordial for us to defend design. Because we spend a very large percentage of our time in our business defending design. You come to us with an idea, we're giving you more because more is what you need, more is what the world needs. And you know, as I said about education, last year we started a video series called Future, where we very transparently tell the world, from children to business people to engineers to whoever wants to listen, what design is about. Design is such a multidimensional discipline that cannot be put in a very narrow box.
I feel like, I don't know, I've been in the design industry longer than I'd like to admit, right? So for the longest time, right, design had been saying that, you know, designers need to be in the C-suite and leaderships and so on. And I think agencies forever were saying like the world would be greener when businesses embrace design. And I'm also an engineer, and it's kind of funny. Engineering never says nobody knows what we do, and I wish people understood that we need engineering. It's sort of a very different problem over there. But the reality is, I think over time, you know, probably due to a lot of large corporate successes with design leadership, that kind of isn't an issue as much anymore. I think people will come to us and say, I need design, I value design, I have no idea what it is. And we can walk them through the process. And as you guys are saying, it's a process. It's not fashion. It's not a sticker on the outside. It's not lipstick on the peg. But I think I'm not really having those conversations as much as it was in the past, in the early days. I would say though that as much as agencies may have thought like this would make life a lot easier because people value design, the reality is what we saw since, like, let's say 2008, is that once businesses decided this is really important, now this is really at the core of what the business does, and then businesses says, well, we don't outsource core, we insource core. So they built internal design teams. So it was actually harder for design agencies because all of a sudden all the great talent got sucked into big agencies. And it used to be that working, I could say in the 90s, working in a sort of stale corporation in a business park in the middle of the suburbs was a way to kill your career, right? But that's kind of not true anymore. So I think what we're actually seeing is not a discussion about value, but what is the process. And the harder parts are when somebody might come in and says, well, you know, I've done my research and I've done my initial sketches and I've done the brainstorming, so let's get it done. And they try to like truncate the process a bit and perhaps to shorten the timeline or shorten the scope and budget. But I find that that's actually not as good because then the team isn't as immersed in the process. And I don't really think that, like, a lot of the research was like, well, that was really a good survey, but this is not the way I would approach research, you know, and things like that, you know. And it's when they try to do 90% and try to get you to do the last 10% is kind of harder. And we typically kind of walk away from those projects because I just don't see them, that they're not going to succeed, you know.
No, I love that you pointed out that point in the design industry's history where all of a sudden there was an influx of corporations realizing the value design and to bring it in-house. But then even as so many leading corporations that truly invest in design are building their internal design teams, right? They still need that external perspective, your catalytic impact, right? And I do see us in the future. We're not that far away where, you know, just like every corporation, every company has marketing, accounting, or engineering or product management. Every company will have, you know, external, you know, just as there's marketing internal, external, there will be design internal almost in any company, depending on what their, you know, product or service is, right? And with external support. So I just feel like there's so, and for every corporation like P&G or GE Healthcare or Amazon, right? There are hundreds and thousands of companies, people building businesses every day, and they are building them, but not knowing how to build them to succeed. And they need insight from, you know, from you guys.
Well, from the
I mean,
agency side, there will never be a shortage of work. I think the reality
Yeah.
is that, like, if you look at a billion-dollar company, they can't hire enough designers to get everything done that they want to have done.
Yes.
So a lot of times they build large teams of very talented design managers that then, when it gets into the nitty-gritty, they don't have enough time to really do all the nuts and bolts. On the other side, there are other ones that are just very large teams, and they're sustaining the current line, and they're launching what's going to come out in 6, 18, 24 months. And they're working on that, and we're working on beyond 24 months. Other times it's like they're really a different type of organization, perhaps focused on something in healthcare or some IP or something, and then design and engineering is a spike of activity that will then flatten out, and they don't really need or want to own the team that does that, right? So they'll just they'll say, we need to get this to market, but 90% of our work is selling that thing, and so we don't want to own the design team. And again, all these people value design in different ways, but there's so much that needs to get done, and as we've been saying, like, everything has shifted, that so much stuff has to get redone. And so and of course the other benefit of agencies is that we're not bogged down by the politics that is within large corporations, and it's easy to get an outside perspective because we're not dragged down by constraints as much. And a lot of the work that we do ends up getting filtered through that eventually, but I think like a fresh outside pair of eyes is often valued.
And also, when we connect with corporations or big clients, they don't necessarily have a design team, or we don't necessarily work with their design team. We might be working directly with different teams, whether it's business, marketing, science, or technology, engineering teams. And it's our job to adapt our language or our way of doing things to align with the way these teams are doing the work, and in introducing design in a way that serves everyone. And I think that flexibility is something that needs to be integrated in design education. A lot of the time, design education seems to be quite elitist about the position of design. And once the students are exposed to the real world, there's a surprise that design is not put on a pedestal for every single client, and that we spend a lot of time defending ourselves. So really opening language, the language of design, the language of connection with all the teams that put products on the markets is essential for the future of our field.
So let me ask you guys, what year did you guys start your firm, right? What was going on during that time? And going back to like what, the catalyst for you, were you doing well in a company, but I felt compelled? I mean, I remember when I was actually, I have my own, I remember when I was at Ross Goldfarb Associates, untrainable. I loved this working for Ross Goldfarb Associates. I thought that was my end all. And I realized that there was something about the method that we were using that I just felt compelled to change the way we were doing our business. And just realized I couldn't stay. I actually wanted to stay, but I just felt such conviction that I realized that there was nothing I could do. I had to follow this, this desire to build something different, right? So how did you guys all, at that moment of realization, right? So that moment for yourself to say, I can't do this. I have to do this. I have to strike out. What were the thoughts in your own mind for anybody here listening to say when they're wondering, do I take that divergent path and believe in myself that much? Or was it just, I'm going to do a couple of gigs and next, consulting, and now consulting has grown into, what was it more intentional or was it accidental?
I can start. I don't think my answer is going to be useful because back then when I started my current agency, Livework, I had no option. That was it. There was I discovered service design in 2008 when I was in Europe doing a master, and then prices struck in over there, and I wanted to work with the service design. It seemed like an interesting thing to do as an industrial engineer and product designer. So I started searching for it, and there was nobody working with that in Brazil. So I decided to just start doing my own projects. And after 1 year, I convinced the first service design agency in the world, which is Livework, to open a studio here, and which I've been leading for over a decade now. So basically, it was that, or working with something else. I had no option. That's why I opened my own firm.
I can tell you about timing. I decided to go out on my own and go with do some work with the friends, and we were going to try a bunch of different things and see what stuck. So it was like, could be an agency, could be a product, it could be a startup, and but it was in April of 2001. So a couple months in, it was going okay, and then it was September 11th, 2001. So, and again, at the time I had an infant and a 2-year-old in an expensive apartment. And so, let's just say that there is no timing. There is no I see a great opportunity. I think the reason I jumped out is that around 2001, right before there was like the .com boom and everything was going towards, a lot of the money was going towards software and web development and not hardware, and I was more interested in hardware at the time. And so a lot of the jobs were, put a plastic shell around something, and they just weren't that interesting to me. So I wanted to find something different and new. And that's why I left to try to, find it on my own, because I think the businesses that I worked for had to do with whatever was possible to sustain their business. Then came the .com boom, and then the bust, and then September 11th. And so, we've had a few discussions here about things are always different and changing and always kind of staying the same, because I think that people are fundamentally the same. I remember, I don't know why, but it always sticks in my head that the biggest worry in the summer of 2001 was the sharks. It was like the summer of the shark and the shark attacks, and they were on the news constantly of the number of people eaten by sharks. And then came September 11th, and it felt so silly to be worried about great white sharks in the vast majority of the world. And it was sort of oh, I can't believe I was worried about sharks, And as a business owner, you're okay, I don't think I have to worry about sharks. It's not going to threaten my business. And then 2001 happened, and then the ramifications of that. And then it wasn't until 2006 that I started Pensa, after many basically failed reboots and pivots. All those were oh, this kind of worked, but not enough, and other things didn't work at all. And then started Pensa, and then that was 2006. 2 years into it, doing pretty good, and then it was 2008, which was the housing crisis. So you just have to be resilient, and you have to expect that it's not going to be what you think it's going to be. And it's the first couple times it's scary, and then after a while it's like a roller coaster you've ridden 1,000 times. The turn is coming, you just don't know when, and it's fine. It'll be fine.
Talk about iteration and pivoting. I mean, that's what happens when you're building a business. You have to, what's your expertise? Who's your customer? How are you supporting them? And all of those different things and then the world changing, and different trends. I want to. Someone has something they were.
I was about to tell a story, but if
ahead.
you want to move on to next, okay.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So your question about why we started Nonfiction. So Nonfiction started in 2016, and that was a year after my co-founder and husband and I were both hired as contractors at a design consultancy called Matter. Matter is now absorbed by Fjord. And we were both hired at the same time. We had to actually show up portfolio at the same time to the same people. It was very awkward. And then after working together on a fairly complex project, we realized that we work very well together because we're very complementary, right? And I had been, thinking for a while about starting my own agency because I've always had this business acumen that I think I have. and after spending a year doing that, realized that maybe now is the time. I have found a partner that I've known for a very long time who I can trust and with whom I can start doing this. Because I never wanted to start a design agency with my name on it or doing it by myself. I wanted to be supported by people who are complementary, love to do the things I hate to do, and are good at the things I'm not good at. And then from there, develop what the company is. So one thing when you start an agency is that, you wing a lot of things, right? I kind of winged the business aspect of it. I winged our positioning at first. And then slowly but surely, you begin to find your voice. Oh, I have this particular voice in this industry. Well, let me put it out there for you to really see it. And as you're doing that, you are evolving what you're doing. So Nonfiction in 2016 was a classic industrial design agency. And then slowly we injected science, we injected technology, we injected engineering, we injected a bunch of new industries. And then realized that what we're actually doing now in 2021 is solving complex systems through physical solutions, whether the physical solution is industrial design, is architecture, or something in between. And so being flexible and getting to do the crazy things we're doing right now, getting to have a say in all of this and moving beyond what you were well known for in the past, right? I was hired, I had a whole career as a freelancer designing for all the agencies out there, but I was always an industrial designer. Industrial design became too small for us. And then we are in the process of evolving what it means to be an industrial designer within the systems design. And that's so incredibly enriching.
I love how Phnam, you also noticed how you had to pivot, but I also hear you following your passion. Each of you, I think, you have something that I think compels you, right, to do what you do, and this is why you have built your agencies around what you're inspired to do, and as you're kind of testing the waters at the same time. It's fun. Your comment, Phnam, to me, is the same thing that I think almost any creative professional would want to do, right? Is to follow what their drive is, understanding what works, what doesn't work. Let me see if there's some comments and Q&A questions from the audience. And then, let's see, one last, and I don't see any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Let me know. What do you guys think? For anybody who's starting their own agency, right? Someone who's, for people that, have you ever met someone, a professional, a fellow colleague, where you think that person should run their own agency? I mean, do you see that in someone, and that they don't take that audacious leap?
I mean, starting an agency is incredibly easy, right? You need a laptop and the table and the client. So I would say everybody who wants to start an agency should give it a try, especially in the labor market like now. If it doesn't work out, you can always find a job. I think the most important part really is to create a network, of like-minded people. And I think, as I started Loft, I was basically on the corporate side, on the agency side for over 20 years before I started my own agency. And I think it really helped, to have basically a Rolodex of people that knew you, that knew what you were doing, and kind of bring a concise offering to their footsteps and be able to kind of leverage that. But I mean, I worked in the pro audio space for a long time as a global design director, and all these people working at Akai, Numeric, Alesis, all the synthesizer companies. It's an incredible, like, tight-knitted industry. So when we started our own agency, there was a ton of people that like, hey, by the way, we have a project for you, right? I think it also helps to kind of be in an industry, and understand kind of an industry well, and then use that as a springboard into, becoming more full feature.
I actually think there are, well, and we all know, right? A lot of creative professionals, we're talking, I say creative professionals because it's not just designers, move from corporate to consultancy, but also to becoming the gig economy contractor, right?
Right.
And there's something that where I meet a lot of people who are, consultants, and yet they can't break that barrier. And sometimes I feel like there's that notion where they think the work should speak for itself. But you guys, I think, know that you have to become the stewards and the brand representatives, right?
Yeah, but I think, I mean, we're a good example. I don't think we had a website for the first 4 years of our business, right? So I think it was, we had probably some sort of landing page that said contact. But I mean, and maybe, I
word
think
of mouth.
This is to be honest, this is the first year where we really are, we hired a marketing director. We started kind of telling our story, but I feel like I know a lot of people out there, even agencies that are bigger than us, where it's all word of mouth. You don't even know where they're coming from, right? So I think this industry is very much about the networks and doing good work and kind of being approachable and becoming successful that way. And I think it's good what you say about contractors, right? I think there's definitely contractors that want to stay contractors. They're really good at what they do. And then there's contractors that should probably be agencies because, they could be bigger and they could have more fun in what they're doing. It's more like a mindset, I would say.
Mm-hmm. They need to support themselves with some planners. You guys have your planners, I'm sure, around you, right?
Phnam said about the idea of finding somebody who's good at what you're not good at, right? That's also critical, right? I don't know if you know Dave Francino from Delft, but he basically was talking about this idea of certain agencies have like a leadership team where nobody's in their hair, everybody does one thing really well and they seem to thrive.
Yep. And you guys, tell us who are you guys? I know that there are a lot of people, when I tell them that you guys were coming up to speak, people were impressed and wanted to know, like, who are you guys looking to hire, so that if anybody's interested, they can reach out to you guys.
Well, me or
any category for each of you guys?
Right now, I think our digital business is exploding. I think we're definitely amping up on the UX side, but I think UX for us is still a product. So we don't do content-driven websites, or we don't do traditional UX. We do, I would say, applications and dashboards for physical products. So it's tough sometimes to also hire UX designers because the traditional UX designer comes from a much more like a web background, and it's really hard to adopt the products. So I think digital product designers it's a rare thing to find.
Yeah, it is a rare thing when it's digital for physical, right? Hardware, software, the overlap. That Venn diagram gets very small.
Yes. Very small, but
yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the way we hire here in Nonfiction, I could care less what's on your resume. What I care about is, have you had an amazingly rich life where you take your experiences, professional, personal, and then inject them into the beautiful stories we tell through products. And I'm going to give you an example of the people who work here. I mean, we have a world specialist in woolly mammoths and ancient sharks. We have an deadlifter champion from Italy. We have people who have traveled the world and told story, like Steve, who's on this call right now answering questions. She's a fashion designer, MBA business design specialist who does strategy for us. Like, everybody has this amazing background, and that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested
high pivotters.
Yes, and also people who are not just resting on their laurels. they're not just finding something they're good at and repeating it again and again. I have no interest in that. I want to see surprise. I want to see people who follow through, people who are willing to take the risks for our clients, and making sure that whatever risk we take becomes reality, right?
Right. And I mean, to build on that, I think it's really important to find people that can adapt and learn. I'd rather teach something new to somebody who's highly adaptable than to hire an expert and be stuck with that expert when that discipline is not needed.
It's funny because, I remember, was there some kind of comment they talked about startups, right? Investors will invest in someone who's built a company and failed 3 times than someone who's never. So in that essence, I kind of hear pivoting, people who are accustomed to pivoting quite, rapidly and able to make that shift. And then that is something that's hard for people to maintain, that perspective and be able to do that again and again as they evolve in their career, actually. So this is where, for all of you who pivot, this is where these agencies are open and see the value in that mindset. What about you guys, Louis and Marco?
I'm not going to be as go ahead, Marco, please.
Oh no, go ahead.
I'm sorry. That was missing from this conversation. The first time it happens. No, I think I'm not going to be as inspiring as you guys, but I'm looking for someone that understands business, but has this creative side to think about the future state of things. So the market, my market, has become really mature, and I need experienced people that are able to deliver solutions that can actually be implemented and bring good results. And sometimes I see that I'm not sure how it is over there, but over here, some designers are really, when they come out of their studies, they are too dreamy, and I think it is good. I don't want to kill that, but at the same time, we are really in a position right now where the changes must happen too fast and be adjusted on the go. So we don't have, at least in my business, in most of the projects, not all of the projects, because we work with systemic design, we work with sustainable futures. There are some projects that we look in more longer terms, but most of the cases we are thinking about improving customer experience, and we need to consider the business side as well. And I'm not seeing many designers, traditional or graduated designers, to come with this knowledge specifically. So that's why the service design field is filled with people that are coming from other professions.
Yeah. Those are you're getting the people who are fascinated by design and innovation, but they've had, longstanding careers in marketing or account management or finance or law. I mean, I've met so many. I love how today, even, we're still seeing so many people who, accidentally, I love this phrase, accidentally stepped into design. They go, wow, this is amazing. You can't just shut your eyes after that, right? Love that. So very cool. Marco, what are you looking for, if anything?
We were looking for somebody with some expertise as a woolly mammoth expertise, but unfortunately, they're really hard to find, and we lost one.
But not got that before you did.
Yeah, it's a needle in a haystack, really. I think people always talk about T-shaped people, right? Like one depth and some breadth, and I think we're always looking for like Greek letter pi shaped people, like 1 or 2 depths and some breadth, because the reality is, as Gregor said, like our UI people need to know industrial design and user interface, because the product is those two together working in unison, and like that we don't really do websites. So we really need somebody who can work on interfaces, understand everything from the nitty gritty of you can't navigate that. The buttons are too small. The touchscreen is not that sensitive to experience and look and feel and all that kind of stuff. So in those cases, somebody who has a foot in each is great, or a foot in industrial design, but also a foot in research and strategy is great. And then from the engineering side, product and engineering, and mechanical engineering too, is like, it could be part design and product design focused, but there's also just like hardcore engineering of, developing technologies and everything. So all these people, because we're a small agency, people have to change their hats quite often. And we recently did a few hires in the past couple of months, and that was the hard problem. And the reality is, despite looking at the unemployment rate, this is really not as correlated to the people that we're looking for. Like, they seem to be all very hard to find or moving around. And I think the pandemic really made people curious to see what other jobs would be like. So I see a lot of motion, but there's not a lot of people sitting around looking for jobs. People go from one place to another, and the people we were interested in were like, I just took a job somewhere else. So I think right now it's really kind of hard to find anybody, and it's a seller's market from the employer. It's an employee's market right now.
Yeah. Well, and what I'm going to get into in our next talk is about how we see talent and what's changing post-pandemic. And absolutely, for every kind of employer, the biggest challenge today is quality of life, right? On a personal level. And Louis, I remember our conversation earlier, how you've really, as an agency owner, took it upon, to safeguard, I think, quality of life, right? So it's an interesting value to offer.
It's part of our employee value proposition. It's this balance between life outside work, and making work fun as well, of course.
Right. But I think, people that want to work in a design agency usually are somewhat more driven by, loving their job. Therefore, are probably more happy in what they do anyway. So it's, just speaking on the flexibility, we just hired a woman who was at Philips in Eindhoven for 13, 14 years, and she's moving to Oregon for 6 months, and then she's moving to North Carolina to work for us there remotely. So I feel like also as an agency, a lot of times you can be like, hey, this is totally no problem for us. Or like a corporate entity would be like, no, you need to be in the headquarters, 80% of the time. I feel like there's a lot more flexibility on the agency side to make your employees love what they do, just by giving them that liberty.
Well, guys, I'm gonna have to interrupt. I've just had so much fun talking to you guys, because there's so many people who wonder about getting to this state that you guys are at, getting to this point of having built an agency. So really appreciate that you guys have shared the inside take on what it's been like to be on this journey. And I appreciate your feedback and your insights. And I'm sure everybody can reach out to you. If you can share your contact information on the side, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.